BlackRock has just forced four of the largest banks in the world to do a massive Bitcoin backflip. And as we can see, Forbes believes this is going to create a $10 trillion Wall Street Bitcoin ETF price boom. But BlackRock isn't just talking to the other banks on Wall Street. BlackRock, as we're about to hear, is talking to not only Wall Street, but also some of the biggest central banks in the entire world. Let's listen to Jay Jacobs from BlackRock.
Like gold and into crypto. I mean, that's fair, right?
Well, if you look at a few things, one is if you look at central banks around the world, a continued movement towards diversification beyond just holding dollars is something that's been happening for decades. So the switch from just holding dollars to holding gold to looking at other types of assets like Bitcoin is a trend that's been years in the making. I think if you take a step back, at BlackRock in 2023, we released our new framework for thematic investing called Mega Forces. And that was the first time we really identified geopolitical fragmentation as a mega force that is driving the world forward over the next several decades. This is materializing in a lot of different ways. It is geopolitical risk between countries. It is materializing in policies like reshoring in the United States. And I think directly related to that geopolitical fragmentation megaforce has been the rise of things like Bitcoin, as people see more destabilization in geopolitics, resulting in the need for more alternative assets.
So BlackRock, I believe, has kind of been hinting at the bigger picture here for a little while. Again, like Jay Jacobs said from BlackRock, 2023 was when they published that paper saying, look, geopolitical instability is creating the need for new kinds of asset classes to be adopted. Now, this is obviously why Wall Street is FOMOing into Bitcoin. Before we come back to exploring this rabbit hole about central banks and their communications with BlackRock, I want to talk about the most recent news that we've seen come out this week. That is, of course, the $4 mega trillion banks getting into Bitcoin. So who are they? Well, they are, as we're about to see, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, and UBS. Again, these banks are absolutely enormous. Again, let's remember, UBS was the bank that absorbed Credit Suisse. So they are literally Europe's largest bank. They are absolutely enormous. They are not a joke. They should be paid very close attention to. And the same can be said about the other names on that list. A lot of people thought that, Bitwise's CIO, Matt Hogan, was maybe just, doing a little bit of, speculation that wasn't quite founded in reality when he came out last week predicting that we would see these mega banks adopt Bitcoin. But we can see very clearly now, the biggest banks in the world are FOMOing into Bitcoin. Goldman Sachs ramps up crypto exposure. This is again, May 2nd, 2025. All of this came out on Friday. All of this is really starting to heat up here. And then have a look, Morgan Stanley on May 1st, the $1.5 trillion Morgan Stanley is now also offering Bitcoin to its investors. Now, what's interesting about Morgan Stanley, might you ask? I have a very interesting clip here. This is the CEO of Morgan Stanley, James Gorman. And he said, quote, that he never really understood Bitcoin, but now the ETFs have made it absolutely undeniable. Now he knows that Bitcoin is not going away and it's not a fad. So by the sounds of it, this guy's been loading up his bags on Bitcoin for a little while. I think it's interesting that all of these big banks are only really being forced to come out and publicly offer Bitcoin to their clients and launch an ETF in 2025 because the demand is absolutely insatiable. So what I think is interesting, these guys have already filled up their own bags. And now that their bags are filled, they're going to start launching their own ETFs. They're going to start launching and marketing these Bitcoin ETF products to their clients. Again, as we're going to be looking at in a moment here, I think this could be an explanation for maybe why we're not going to see these traditional 4-year cycles unfold like they have in the Bitcoin space. Maybe we're seeing some signs that things could be a little bit different this time. That could be something we explore here in a moment. But before we get there, again, These guys are going to start marketing and shilling Bitcoin ETFs in 2025. So that's the news. These 4 mega, huge banks who control $10 trillion worth of assets combined, they are now going to be launching Bitcoin ETFs this year. This is should not be understated. These guys are absolutely huge and they hold a lot of assets. Okay, if I were to show you a little bit of just how much money could be unlocked into Bitcoin, let's jump on over here. We can see Morgan Stanley. These guys hold $1.66 trillion worth of assets under management. What about our good friends over there in Europe? The bank that absorbed Credit Suisse, of course, we're talking about UBS, has approximately $5.9 trillion of assets under management. That's huge. So these guys, again, the Forbes article, some people were like, oh, that's clickbait. Well, is it? I don't think it is. It is, the world is changing fast. Bitcoin is suddenly braced for a $10 trillion Wall Street ETF price boom. Again, it's worded very nicely. But we do have $10 trillion worth of banks adopting Bitcoin this week. So again, the Forbes article that everybody in the Bitcoin space has kind of been pointing fingers at, so to say, but labeling it clickbait. I mean, it's true. We have $10 trillion worth of banks coming into Bitcoin in the past week. This is, again, a reason why I think a lot of us are not quite prepared for what's probably going to be coming in the not too distant future. Again, if you are looking for somewhere to buy your Bitcoin, I always encourage you guys to check out what the Bitcoin Well is doing. They are our partner here on the YouTube channel and Brandon's YouTube channel, Green Candle, because they force you guys to self-custody your Bitcoin by default. And we're massive fans of self-custody. We don't believe you own the Bitcoin unless you take self-custody of your Bitcoin, which is why we're such massive fans of what the Bitcoin Well is doing. Okay, so whether you're a retail pleb looking for somewhere safe and secure to send your family and friend members, or whether you are a high net worth individual looking to buy Bitcoin over the counter, very tight fees, very tight spreads, low fees, we recommend what the Bitcoin Well is doing. They have a service for anyone who needs to get started on their Bitcoin buying journeys. We highly encourage you to check them out. Once you've bought the Bitcoin at the Bitcoin Well, I also always encourage you guys to check out what Stampede is doing. Yes, it's essential that you put your Bitcoin in a hardware wallet. That's the most important step in Bitcoin. The second most important step that you can take when you self-custody your Bitcoin is writing down your 12 or 24 words. That is your Bitcoin. That's your Bitcoin private keys onto something that's not actually life-proof. Okay? I always encourage you guys, don't write down your Bitcoin backup words on paper. It's terrible. Put them on something like this. These are the titanium plates that Stampede make. As you can hear, that's real metal, baby. Now, again, BlackRock, 2023, they're talking about the 5 mega forces that they believe it's going to be changing things in the future. Now, again, why weren't they, publicly launching ETFs in 2023? Maybe they were just launching their bags. That's what I think was happening. And I think, once the big boys have their bags packed, we're now starting to get confirmation that they've been loaded up on Bitcoin for a long time. Again, we showed you this last week. The Swiss National Bank just got exposed for buying hundreds of millions of dollars of MicroStrategy last quarter, while they're publicly saying they will not hold Bitcoin in its reserves. But hey, just forget about the hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin exposure we have through MicroStrategy. That's different, okay? Wild. It's absolutely wild, the narrative spin that these bankers try to put on the everyday person who they're not quite able to see through the BS. I'm trying to be careful what I say here on YouTube. But the everyday person just thinks, oh, my central bank in Switzerland says Bitcoin cannot be put in the reserves of a country. It's too volatile. It goes up and down too much. Just ignore the fact that they have hundreds of millions of dollars of MicroStrategy. And boy, that's loud. Somebody's trying to ring me. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. If it's super loud, I'll go and answer the phone. But again, I think it's not just central banks in Switzerland buying Bitcoin. As we can see, Utah is now going to become the second state about to vote on a Bitcoin reserve bill. So again, I think a lot of people have been lulled to sleep of all of the Bitcoin reserve bills that we're seeing come out, because nearly everybody right now just has come to the realization that Bitcoin is going to be adopted by the world in one way, shape, or form. And I think it's only a matter of time before every state in America holds Bitcoin. Utah is, by the looks of things, just trying to position itself to be one of the first states that adopts Bitcoin, which I think is super interesting, super fascinating. But I don't think it's nearly as fascinating as some of the other things I've seen pop across my desk this week. To McLovin's point, bankers are figuring out Bitcoin. Hey, oh, well, it's about time that our banker friends, figure out Bitcoin. They're only how late? 16 years late, which is pretty wild, really, when we think about it. 16 years late to the party. Have fun, Morgan Stanley. Have fun, JP Morgan. They will happily buy my bags off me at high prices. Much, much higher prices, mind you. When they do finally figure out that Bitcoin's the only thing you want to own in this world. Now, I have another interesting comment in the chat here. Bitcoin showed signs of decoupling the last few weeks. Nearly as if you read my mind there, no second best.